What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Oi, invalidating much? There you are, maybe just having survived a tough chapter, but you're told it didn't kill you, so turn that frown upside down. I much prefer what doesn't kill you had better start running. Now this one puts you back in the driver's seat, allows you to feel what you've been through, and gives you the choice to turn that energy into action. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm Jenna Reed-Cote. I'm a registered social worker with a master's degree and a counseling practice through Phoenix Attitude called Counseling and Health Advocacy by Jenna Reed-Cote. For this podcast, I'm chatting with people who've taught me how to rise from the ashes and how to help others do the same. They also don't need to be told twice that they can ask questions and challenge me too. Meaning conversations you really don't want to miss if personal growth is what you're after. I know you have a choice in the social worker you work with. Thank you for choosing me today. Now buckle up and enjoy the ride. There are very few creatures on this earth more formidable than the big sister, though I have a feeling Mama Bear is kind of what edges it out of the way, but I'll find that out. So I thought I'd build up some goodwill with my big sister and have her be the first guest on my podcast. So, hey, Claire Bear.
Hello, I'm very excited and very honored to be your first. Thank you.
Well, you taught me how to not be scared by that prospect and try to figure out how to forge that path first if it's not there in the first place, right? So
just make it your own.
Thanks for that. I probably didn't thank you enough as a kid because I didn't like you telling me that as a kid or trying to role model that for me as a kid. I had to have self-control over my life, and being stubborn was the only way to do that. So Claire Moscone-Biafore has been an osteopath and athletic therapist for about 20 years, and I think she's able to keep doing this work with so much energy and passion because she is fueled, it seems, by empowering female athletes. She's able to bring the best out of people, especially in a competitive setting, because she's also a world champion in Shotokan karate. She has 3 kids, 2 dogs, a husband, and a partridge in a pear tree, probably somewhere. There's no template for training someone like me who had all these health challenges in karate. At least that wasn't the case at the time. She seemed to come into the training with me in a way that kind of assumed ability and then worked on it from there, as opposed to what most other people do is kind of keep people in their comfort zone, as fun as that is, and less painful, but that's not Claire's style. And so that kept me honest, as I was going to have to face a lot of obstacles that nobody had really kind of faced before. And so I did need that role modeling to be able to know that just because something hasn't been done yet doesn't mean it won't get done and by you. Someone has to do it first, right? So we are going to go way, way, way back. I have heard stories about you starting to train me, but I want to go back before that. You were, okay, am I allowed to do the math on camera? Which
sure.
Feel how old you are, but
sure. You know what? It's only a number, and it's really how you feel. So go ahead.
Very true, and I'm pretty sure you will feel like 16 for the rest of your life, because you're still there. Yeah. So you were about 15 or 16 when I was born. Where were you in your robust career in karate at that point? I don't even know when you started, which seems weird to say.
So I started when I was 11. I had a best friend at the time, and her mom was putting her into karate. Mm-hmm. And her mom asked my mom, "Do you want to try karate, or do you want the kids to try it?" So I said, "Sure," because I'm very much that kid. I'm willing to try anything at least once, and then aim for the stars and see what happens. And honestly, I loved it. And so from that time, from 11 till maybe almost 21, I competed a lot. And so during 16, when I was 16 years old, I was probably just getting to that peak of that competition. I started training basically 5-6 days a week. I started competing in North America. And it wasn't until I was about 17 or 18 when I started doing international travel as well. But it was phenomenal. I really miss it for sure.
It really is a whole other feeling when you're in the zone. Like when you're in the zone, I remember, they would say, okay, Jenna on deck, which was, the next person who would be competing. And this is so me. I was such an anxious kid, may still be an anxious adult in some respects. I would be the only one in my belt group, let's say, for a tournament. And they'd say Jenna on deck. So I'm literally competing against nobody, but also the most important person, which is me. And despite the fact that I was competing against no one, I felt like I was going to pass out every time I heard Jenna on deck.
I can't lie. I always had those butterflies and it didn't make a difference. I think
just telling me this now.
Of course. Yeah. But the thing is that I was able to manage it and channel it appropriately. But that's what athletes do, right? Is that you don't focus on, oh my gosh, I think I'm going to throw up. You focus on okay, stomach, butterflies, got it, let's go. Like it's very succinct. So I think I was able to manage it differently because of it.
Well, I think the universe thought I could handle it kind of like you. And then the universe kind of came to its senses because it didn't really feel like a decision for me to make to, kind of use that energy into like, you can make this epic if you're, channeling that anxiety into this power energy. So the best way to describe it is my mom said she would see me. And then as soon as I would like be on, it was like I was in the zone. I was out of control of my body. Like I was being channeled by something else that was not my nerves. But every single time I would, want to pass out right before. So it's not easy. It's not easy competing. But that's also, I guess, a testament to why your mom's house, kind of looks like the Karate Hall of Fame because it's just gold everywhere between you and your brothers with the trophies, which was just so awesome as a kid growing up. Those trophies were like as tall as I was. So
I'm only 5'2", so they still are really tall. I remember my biggest one. I was in a grand championship. A grand championship just means that you take all the first place winners and you put them together and they all compete together. And it was the first time a female had ever surpassed all the men in that division, which was great. So what I did was I beat all the men. I got first place, and this trophy, I swear to you, was probably over 6 feet, something like that.
Oh. Not surprised. You seem to be the one who is driving this is just a school activity, after school activity to, I'm going to take over the world. Like that wasn't something that your mom and dad had to like drag you kicking and screaming. Yeah, I didn't think so.
No,
but
that's all. Anyway. I like the athleticism of it. I like the, all the girls that you have to remember, like I grew up in a very strict Italian family. Well, not super, super strict because they allowed me to do karate, but I grew up in a pretty strict Italian family, so much so that they, my mom's side of the family didn't even want me to go to university type of idea because they said, oh, Claire's never going to get married. And why would you do that to her? And so on. So I was used to fighting all the time. So it was just a natural progression to get into martial arts, to be honest with you, because I was quite stubborn and I knew what I wanted and I knew what I wanted to do. I know it's shocking. I know. I knew what I wanted to do. And so I appreciated the versatility that martial arts provided, especially at Northern Karate. I mean, it's so versatile in the way that, Hanshi Burkowski puts everything together. I mean, it's really unmatched anywhere that I've seen so far. And so I'm very grateful to have started there.
You and me both, like without question. So I think it's clear that karate is more than what people assume, which is kind of conditioning the body and just getting that physical strength there. But really having trained in it, I realized that as the more I did it, the body and conditioning the body and like that physical strength wasn't really the focus. There's so many things that we learn in karate that help us in the rest of our lives. So yes, you could probably knock someone out, with your pinky, but what else have you actually learned that you felt was transferable from karate that helped shape the person you are today?
I think my willingness to not give up on things, and I think the ability to look at things in a positive manner, versus, and the same thing that transferred over to you, right? Like, let's look at your ability versus let's look at your disability, right? Which a lot of people unfortunately get very stuck on. So that's what I really liked about martial arts, is that I was able to take that versatility, put it into my practice, not give up, so much so that I've made some great connections. I'm currently in Calgary right now. I'm the medical lead for a high performance secret gap tour for women's hockey. We're talking about like elite women's hockey right now. But then, moving forward, in 2 weeks from now, I travel straight to Florida, and I'm going to be taking care of some professional mixed martial artists that have fights coming up as well. So if it was my focus on looking at things that I wasn't able to do, I would never be where I am right now. But it's because that drive, that focus, I think that's what really stood out for me. And I think that's really what transferred over into my life.
So you were already on your way to taking over the world. And it's 4 years later that I start training with you. So I was 4 years old. I have 4 major surgeries under my belt by the time I'm 4. And that includes spinal, brain, orthopedics, fun stuff like that. And I have braces up to my chest. I think those are your favorite braces because you could hold me at an angle.
Cute, but they were so cute.
So I have braces up to here and a walker. And although no one believes me now, I apparently was pretty darn shy. How did you combat that?
So I think the biggest thing was I was working really closely with your physiotherapist at the time, Tima. And so I had asked for her opinion, and there was multiple times that I came to your physio appointments as well. You may not remember that, but I used to come to your physio appointments on a regular basis just to kind of see, what was, what were you able to do? Like and as I mentioned, I always focused on what you were able to do. Okay, so show me what Jenna can do today. Great, let's do that. Now, in my mind, then I thought to myself, okay, how are we going to, transfer this over into martial arts? So working with Tima, and I remember Teddy Grahams were a huge thing for you. So I went out and bought every single thing of Teddy Grahams that I could find.
That's probably where you got that, actually. They were giving me Teddy Grahams at Tima's.
And then in addition to working with your mom and dad, of course, that was, I think what I did is I took the best out of everybody, and then I transferred over it into you. And a lot of it was, yes, okay, so Jenna, let's try this. And then, for example, you would fall and it'd be like, okay, maybe not today, let's work up to it. And then that was my therapy background coming in as well, because then I would look at it and go, okay, I need her to do this. How do I go from here to here? Like, what can I do and what are our many steps? And so really that's all we did.
Yeah. And ladies and gentlemen, she's so good at it that I am now 30 and still break fall without even thinking about it when I invariably fall. So yeah.
Everybody falls, lady. Everybody falls.
It's true. And it's so funny because I was thinking about this the other day. Most people have the experience of realizing they can't trust their parents when they're teaching them how to ride a bike because, the whole don't let go. Oh, I won't let go. Parent really likes to go, and like these kids either fall or they keep riding. I didn't have that, and without you, it could have been something that I really missed out on, I had to learn how to break fall. And so how you taught me how to do this, I think you only had to do it once. So Claire, as I said, I had braces up to my chest, and she held me from like the chest strap on the back at a 45-degree angle. Only you could get my parents to pay you to do this, by the way. So holding me at a 45-degree angle, I'm getting an awful sense that I know where this is going. But Claire wouldn't do this to me, no. She's like, you're not going to let go. You're not going to let go. You're like, yeah.
Okay, but there's some disclosure to that though. We didn't start at 45 degrees, right? Like we started off with, some push-ups, and then we started off with maybe 10 or 15 degrees, and then we worked our way up to 45 degrees, and then we worked up to actually completely standing, right? So again, it was that progression that was super, super important, because I needed you to understand, yes, you are going to fall, but there has to be a way that you have to understand the best way to do it and the safest way to do it to make sure we don't have any other issues moving forward, right?
And I think there was always a lawyer in the room, right? So
possibly
that might have helped a little bit for me.
Not you. We don't even know. Maybe or maybe not. Maybe I asked them to go get some Teddy Graham.
You are the favorite. I apologize. I forgot my place for a second in my family dynamic. You are the favorite.
No to that. I'm not going to say no to that.
So you talked about how Tima was involved, and Tima was my physiotherapist from the get-go, and then Hanshi and Kiyoshi, who started the karate school. But my parents were worried about me starting karate, but also knew that it was really going to be important that I know how to defend myself.
We had to transition you into, and I would do this for any person that quote unquote may not fit the profile of a martial artist, right? So what I would do is, and I did that with multiple people, is we did private sessions first until you had that confidence, until you had that ability, until you had that drive to do it in a class setting. Then I threw you right in the class, because that's exactly where you should have been. Right? And then we kind of modified it from there.
Yes. So even though this hadn't really been done before when it came to my stuff, how did you guys all feel comfortable at each step, that this was going in the right direction in terms of training? Because you guys were making this up as you went along. So what role, so Tima played a certain role, Kiyoshi and Hanshi, what role did they do in terms of supporting you, because you were already a self-starter?
It was just constant communication, to be honest with you, and constant, especially with Tima, for example. Oh, okay, so what surgeries did she have? Okay, what complications are we looking at? Are there any issues moving forward? And then having that same conversation with your parents individually. Yeah. And then having that same conversation with Hanshi and Kyoshi and saying, like Jenna needs to be here, but she can't do that just yet. Do you have any suggestions for me getting up to here? So it was a lot of, it was constant communication. It was constant development, curriculum development. That's really what it was. And it wasn't curriculum development like we're starting from brand new. It was, how are we going to make this work for you? Not, oh, Jenna can't do that. Oh, okay, so we're just not going to look at that. No. What can we do? Let's move forward. Let's try to modify it. Let's try to do this. That's my biggest thing, is that I think a lot of people get stuck on the stuff that they can't do, and then they kind of give up. I don't like that. That's not good enough for me. Let's look at what you can, and then let's go from there. And then I just kind of like push you a little bit more and see where you are. And yeah, there were times where we did things and it was an epic fail, 100%. What I did was, instead of kept pushing you into that, that awful feeling, I would pull you back a little bit. We would develop a couple of things, or I would work on smaller muscle, fine motor movements, things like that. And then I would push you back into that again to see how your body responds and to see how you responded. And more often than not, you were able to do it the second, third time around. And that's what we really focused on.
Yeah. And it was really interesting, because I know I'm jumping a little bit, but when I had my pre-grading which was a couple weeks after I had my shunt surgery. So an incision on my head and my stomach. And so I still had to do the pre-grading, which for people who don't know is so much worse than the grading. Because the pre-grading really represents the exam. The grading represents, you know, the graduation and the ceremony, except
it's a formality.
So the pre-grading is the hardest part. It's like 3 hours, and you're usually doing it with a bunch of people, and you know it's going to be, you know, the hardest kind of day you're going to have for a while. And you also realize, man, there's so much safety in numbers. So when I had to reschedule my pre-grading to have those surgeries, I hadn't realized that that also meant that I was going to do like the pre-grading alone. So,
but also at the same token, it was, I knew that you were ready to go. And so for us to just wait another 6 months would have just been disheartening, to be honest with you. And I knew that you were ready and you were focused, and I knew that's exactly what you wanted. So the options were, that's fine, recover from your surgery, but then let's go, get back on that horse and let's go get it done.
And actually, so during that pre-grading, it was so obvious that the NKS team is, you know, there's a universal sense to why they train people. And so, yes, people could make the assumption there's this little kid with braces, like, you know, up to like here, and, you know, just this little munchkin who's had so many surgeries. And it's so easy for kind of the deal to be, okay, let's, you know, bring Jenna in so she feels like she's participating in life. And, you know, we won't make her feel bad about this. You don't get that with NKS. You get people who really are committed to working as hard as you are to help yourself level up. And during that pre-grading, I got called out. I remember I said something stupid, apparently, like, I can't do that to, and I'm not sure of his rank anymore, but Mike Walsh. And without missing a beat, he says, no, what you can say is you haven't learned how to yet.
Or I will try.
True. But like, it was just, usually you were the one who would, you know, catch me in these. And to have someone who wasn't training me on a regular basis, we'd see each other at gradings. Looking back, I'm just so appreciative that really everybody who seems to train at karate, at Northern Karate, really was in this not to follow any template and to churn out, you know, robotic champions, but it was, you know, recognizing that what you're training in people is not just their body, it's their mind and their spirit as well. So they were able to catch me in that, you know, bad habit of saying I can't do it. And
you have to remember that with the spina bifida that you have, the problem is a lot of people, you know, don't do that, don't touch this, don't do this, you won't be able to do this. And that makes me frustrated as a therapist, as a martial artist, and as a mom and as a person. Like, it just makes me frustrated when people say, no, don't do that. Because why can't I? You know, why can I not push Jenna to go and do push-ups? And why can I not push Jenna, you know, to, you know, start doing, you know, katas, which are like patterns that are put together in a standing position? Why does she have to do it sitting down? No, get up, let's get this done. And what was the worst case scenario? We needed to take breaks in between, but that's what I was focusing on. And I think that's why Northern Karate School is so successful, because I think that's what they focus on. Let's look at your ability versus what you cannot do, and then let's go from there.
And then you'll agree with this too. Part of the training isn't, again, just to have that robotic, you know, consistent technique necessarily, but people would get stuck in the fact that they may not know the whole kata, or that they know that they make mistakes at certain places. What I learned, and was hard for me to learn with my ego in the way, was what you do know, you do to the best of your ability. It doesn't matter if doesn't necessarily matter if you're stopping like every 3 techniques, because you really just don't know the kata, you can't remember it. But there's no excuse for not using those 3, you know, movements as an opportunity to show like your commitment to this and, you know, that practice. And it was a good lesson for me as a perfectionist, to learn. And I think that's something that we all need to learn, in different areas of our life. And so talking about creating this and figuring out why I can or can't do things, and how to get them done despite being told this isn't going to work. You role modeled quite clearly how to think outside the box. Again, this wasn't a situation where I was going to get a participation award or you were going to get a, pat on the back for training the kid in the wheelchair or the braces up to, here. And so seeing you think outside the box and know that nobody is really limited by expectations. You can go outside of the box. You're totally welcome. It takes bravery. It takes courage to think outside the box and that was a huge lesson because yes, of course, you created a whole new karate thinking outside the box, but I needed to have that skill to not only, actually do well in karate, but in life. I wanted to know what from my training kind of makes you feel like, yes, this could have been an epic failure, but we kept on trying. And this is what we found how to do this.
I think the ability for you to do your katas in a standing position with your braces on. And so I think that was the biggest thing because you have to remember for the longest time we did things seated, right? Because we wanted to make sure, and you had so many regressions with your surgeries and how you were feeling and were you having a good day today and so on and so forth. So I think the ability for us to look at it and go, okay, let's do somewhat of a stance. Can we do this? What is it looking like today? I think our ability to push through and do patterns, katas, in a standing position was really big for me, for you, because I was like, yes, you got this. You know exactly what stance you're supposed to be in, what position you're supposed to be in, what direction you're supposed to be facing. And to boot, your upper body was phenomenal. Your upper body's never been an issue. Let's be honest, right? Like your upper body has never been an issue. And so, the ability for you to have that core stability to break boards and do stuff in a standing position is phenomenal to me. And still to this day, I'm actually quite happy in how much of a progression we always made.
Why it was such a hard process for me, especially when it came to the braces, was, and it's like the movie Twins. You remember Twins with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito? Okay.
Am I Danny DeVito? Is that what you're trying to say?
Sorry?
Am I Danny DeVito? Is that what you're trying to say? Because I'm sure.
Oh, I felt like no. Okay, you're only one province away. I am not going to piss you off or anything like that. When you get back to Toronto, we'll have a real conversation about this. No, what was so weird for me, and I think people should know when they're training someone who has to largely forge a new path. I knew that I was giving you everything that you would give someone when you're training, and because I took it seriously too. Yes, there were times where I felt forced to go into it, but ultimately it was such a passion of mine and such a place for me to find my confidence. I was just like, I know I'm doing perfect technique. I know it's perfect to aim because I've worked hard. And I truly, in my head, because I knew I was working so hard, because I knew, my technique was really good, how I envisioned myself doing it was like you. When I trained, I saw you and me. And that's how I thought I looked when I did karate, right? But what would totally dethrone me would be having to look in the mirror. And that was something I avoided, like, I guess I can't say like the plague right now because that's just a little too fresh. But I had an idea of what I looked like doing it and what my effort should make me look like. And then when I had to see myself in the mirror, it was a totally different person. So in my mind, I'm Arnold Schwarzenegger. When I looked in the mirror, I was just like, oh my God, that person actually doesn't look like they're doing this perfectly. And I didn't like the way that I looked when I stood. So
Yeah, but one of our goals though was to try to eradicate that from your mind, right? Because I mean, we all look at another person and we go, yeah, in my mind, I look like that when I run. I'm a horrible runner. Yeah, in my mind, I look like my Olympians, right? Like all these girls and stuff can outrun me like there's nobody's business. But when I run, I look like them. But I think the biggest issue was separating you from your physical being and your mental being. And so I didn't really care about what your physical being was. I cared about what you knew what it needed to look like, right? Like you needed it to look like this. We're going to do a punch. It needs to look like this. You need to, whatever the case is. And you would replicate it and I'd be like, great, done, on point, and it's perfect. And so I think the biggest thing, because you have to remember, you always had a lot of doctors telling you, you're not going to do this, you can't do that, this and that, you got to stay away from that. So for the most part, we spent a long time fighting those people.
Oh, and they also, going back to that, black belt grading, they said I wasn't allowed to start training again until a month after, and that's the day of my grading. So I started back after a week, and I liked the idea of kind of going, behind their backs. And then my mom took it a step further and sent them the karate, video of me graduating. And I'm thinking, oh my God, he's going to kill us. But
now, just to be clear though, we did everything to the best of our ability to make sure that you were as safe as possible.
I know.
Going to be no complications, right?
In fact, it drove me crazy because when I came back to training, you're like, okay, we're just going to do the movements. I don't want snap. I don't want this. And I'm like, this feels so wrong. This feels so wrong.
Right, but we also had to, there's a structural component to it, right? So you always have to look at, and that's what I do with my other patients as well, right? Like there's a structural component to every single issue that presents itself, right? So we have to respect that the body is trying to tell us something, right? So, post surgeries that you've had, multiple on, okay, no, we can't go, running around and doing things and, that's going to cause, some issues and complications, because I knew how your body was going to respond. So it was the ability to understand where you needed to be at that moment and then working within it. And then obviously you would always surpass it. And then moving forward, you would continue surpassing it. And then I would keep pushing you to make sure that whatever boundary you thought you had, nope, let's keep going. Let's keep moving forward.
And I don't know if you or Hanshi or Kiyoshi know this little tidbit, but I was having that surgery, my shunt surgery, because the scar tissue had adhered to the tube that my shunt was attached to. And they were saying it was actually kind of all of the karate, like it was exacerbating the scar tissue and everything. So of course I needed to have the shunt detangled from the scar tissue. When was this happening, Claire? Do you remember what was happening in the world?
I don't.
SARS.
Wow. Okay. No, I had no idea.
I had to keep getting the surgery pushed so I could train again. But SARS was there, and apparently my neurosurgeon had to fight with, the government to have an OR open, right, for me. And so I was so excited to finally get this done and, finally just focus on karate that when I was leaving that morning for the hospital to have brain and abdominal surgery, Dad was bringing me, I called behind me as if I was going to the dentist. Mom, don't forget the weapons tape. So I could actually watch the weapons stuff after surgery and I wasn't technically missing training.
You were so focused, right? You were so focused on what needed to get done and you knew exactly what you needed to do. And that was a perfect scenario for that case, right? Like, yes, I mean, could we get you out of the surgery? No, it was absolutely necessary, 100%. But was there any other ways around it? 100% there was. Go get that tape, go look at that stuff, make sure you understand it, and then that way, when we were able to physically implement it, you were that much better off because you would already put that mind, body, spirit connection together, which is great.
Yeah. And so kind of veering away from outside, thinking outside the box as such a gift you gave me. But the other was you spending, and we've kind of been talking about this, but you spending a lot of time trying to rewire my brain to know that just because my journey was going to look really different than most other people doing the same thing, it didn't mean my victories meant any less. Now stop my whining and drop and give you 50, right? That's it. And yeah, that's hard to learn. Like that's hard to put your ego aside and learn that just because you don't feel like you're on par with people and what they find, important, but knowing that you're doing your best and your best is going to get you somewhere. And because you taught me that, there was this family. I volunteered at the Spina Bifida clinic actually for 6 years. And because I wasn't a practitioner, I could be kind of as open as I wanted to, or be an open book. And so I would sit with so many of these families and I watched, them grow up. And these parents would, kind of flag me down. And based on how old their kid was, that's kind of the questions I assumed I was going to get. And then there was this father who I had watched the kid grow up, and he was 2 years old, the kid. And the dad had been staring at me for a while. So I just went over. I'm like, "You doing okay?" He says, "Yeah." Says, "Can I ask you a question?" I said, "Yeah, sure." And so my mind automatically goes to what would they be asking about a 2-year-old? And he looks at me, he says, "Do you know how to drive? Can you drive?" And it took me a split second to realize that it was more than that he was asking. So I said, "Yes, I can drive. I drive with hand controls. And before you worry yourself anymore, your son is going to drive. It's going to look different, but he's going to drive. He's also going to take the car out when you tell him he can't. He's going to be bringing the car back with, dents and no gas. He's going to do all of that. It's just going to look different."
Right.
Claire, he couldn't decide whether to cry or to laugh, because that was so meaningful to him, because you could tell that he'd spent the last 2 years trying to figure out the milestones that he had imagined being able to do with his son, and now wondering, if they could even happen at all, or how they would look. And as you said, especially back in the day, you had a lot of smart people on your team saying, "No, he can't do that. No, you can't do that. Or this is why you can't, and don't even try." And so you teaching me to do that allowed me to have that conversation with him. And I think that really helped. I think he had the benefit of Claire there, without you having to be there. And that meant a lot to me and a lot to him. So thank you. I want to talk to you about how you focused your training on not just the body, but also the spirit as well. Because training my body, as we've discussed 18 million times by now, was not the main goal. And so you had an even harder job, because you were going to have to build up my spirit as well as my body during our training.
I mean, there were regressions for sure, right? Because every single time you knew you had to have another surgery. I could see that your demeanor changed a little bit, and I think the biggest thing is just keeping that positive attitude was super important for you, right? Yes, I would listen to you complain about it for about a split second. I'd be like, "Okay, TikTok, let's go. We got class. Let's get this going here," right? Mm-hmm. So I think the idea of acknowledging where you are and then figuring out a way to get you past it was a very big component of your training. And as I mentioned to you, there was a lot of regressions that we had just because of the surgeries that you had to have. But your ability to do something physically, then I would say to you, "Look, you couldn't do this a month ago," and you'd be like, "No, you know what? You're right." And then that would spark that positive attitude, and then we would just develop that.
Claire, I don't remember the last 30 years I've ever said "you're right."
I think we're right.
Talking about different.
I am always right. I just wanted to throw that out there.
What was your proudest moment from our training together?
The day that you broke your board at the black belt grading. I could not have been more proud of you on doing it, because you looked at me for a split second and I could see in your face, you're like, "Oh, I don't know if this is going to go." And I'm like, "No, let's go." And honestly, there was a small part of me, because you were so tired. You have to remember that, in your pre-test, in your testing, the testing is about an hour and a half, 2 hours, right? So at that point you were tired, right? But then you had kept pushing yourself, and kept pushing you and all the other instructors kept pushing you. And then, you know, when you got to the board breaking part of it, I thought to myself, okay, she needs to do this, because if she doesn't do this, then, you know, then you're going to feel horrible and you're going to feel like you failed, because I knew you already. And then you broke that board and I heard that wood, and I could not have been happier for that moment for you.
Your mom was even so invested in this. So
we all were invested in this thing. We spent so many years trying to get this going.
Well, no, I mean, just even in the board breaking, like, for the love of God, I could not catch a break. It literally, that included breaking the board. I could not catch a break. And so what, you know, just to set the scene of what this looks like for people who don't know, this was at the grading. And you know how many people come to graduation ceremonies in general. So am I overestimating? But there's like 150 people there in the stands? No?
There's probably more. Already at any given grading, this is pre-COVID, of course, but at any given grading, we had 250 participants, right? So you have to remember, if each of those 200 people bring 1 or 2 people minimum, you do the math, right? It's a lot of people.
Yeah, and so yes, we are almost at the end of the grading, and one of the best parts, you know, when this doesn't happen to you like it did to me, is getting to break the board, because boy, is like that's instant gratification. Like, you know, your hard work was for something. You don't care how your knuckles are going to feel later. I had broken boards.
But that's how you knew that form, that 10 years that we had worked, or whatever amount of time it was that we worked to get to that.
Yeah.
That's how you knew that your form was on point and it was perfect. Because if it isn't, you don't break that thing. If it is, you go right through it like butter. And that's exactly what you did.
Fair enough. You are forgetting a part in the middle where, yes, your form and your technique and all that practice can get you through the board 99% of the time. Other percent is when you're in a wheelchair, and the gym that they're, you know, doing this grading in to accommodate all these people. And I guess that they were really wanting to show us like how great their amenities were, because they had gone through the effort of waxing the floor.
Perfect.
So, which I didn't realize, which made me feel worse, because there I am. I've broken boards before. I learned to do it when I was 10 so I could be Karate Barbie for my dance recital. And so I knew I could do it. And I didn't know why in front of like 300 people, you know, I'm not going through. So I'm like, okay, this is obviously them hazing me, and I'm not going to give them the satisfaction of that. So I tried again. Must have been a fluke, right? No. And I'm getting pissed because I also don't like this whole audience on me. I'm a little bit of a perfectionist. So then I think it was Leslie who was holding the board. So she's holding the board, you know, with, you know, great stance. She's not supposed to be able to move. So somebody comes and kind of holds her holding the board, thinking that that's the problem. So now we have almost 3 people holding Leslie. And then my dad finally realizes that it's the waxed floor that's having me bounce back. Your mom is screaming from the audience, the board is knotted, it's knotted. And so my dad ultimately, with 3 people holding Leslie, my dad bracing my wheelchair for me to finally go through that.
That's a testament to, you know, power in numbers, right? So we're not going to sit there and break it for you. No. You're going to go break it yourself, but we're going to help you in getting that focus to do it on your own.
I didn't think I could do it on my own. I was just so determined to get the hell out of there. I was like, no, I cannot be in this. Like, no, this is no. How did you navigate feeling like you were taking it too easy on me or too hard on me? Like, how did you find that balance? Because it's not easy, because you don't want to break their spirit. You don't want to break it. You just want to get to the very edge of that.
No, I think the biggest thing was communication. I think that's what it all comes down to. And so my first question to you, if you always remembered, was, how was your day today? that's where I would get a lot of my information. If you said, oh, I'm not having a good day, this is horrible, I'd be like, okay, so today's maybe not that day that we're gonna, you know, start pushing her a little bit more, or maybe we've got to give it a little bit of a break today. But then you'd be like, no, I feel great, I just woke up, I'd be like, yep, let's go time, let's go. So it wasn't so much a trial and error, it was a constant communication with you, because I think a majority of times people that are helping other people, their own ego and their own ability gets in the way. And so the biggest thing is, I think as a practitioner, you know, and maybe this is like the mom in me as well, is, you know, I would look at you and go, okay, what kind of a day are you actually having, right? Can I push you today? Can I not push you today? And then based on that information, then I would either push or not push.
And it's so funny because now when I train with Adam, if I'm having a bad day and it just so happens I'm training with Adam the next day, I text him and I say, we are leveling up tomorrow. I know was able to do 200 pounds last week. We're going to see if I can do 215 or whatever. And he knows that means that I've had a hard day and that I need a chance to rise from the ashes. Like that's how I do it when I'm pissed off or doubting my ability is I challenge myself. And so for some people, it's like summoning all that anger when you're lifting to, you know, get to that point. That doesn't work for me. Finally, Adam realized he can't say, just get angry, think about the person you hate most and like, da-da-da. And that didn't work for me. And I finally gave it to him because it's just like, I said, Adam, just say I can't do it. Just say, okay, well, I thought we were able to do it today, but maybe we'll try again next week. I'm giving it to him and it still works. So that's what you did.
And that's a testament to you, right? Because I was the one that always had to do that for you when you were younger, but now at 30 years old, you get to summon that by yourself, right? Like that as a whatever you want to call it, mom figure, big sister figure, whatever you want to call it. That's what you want. You want the person to empower themselves. You shouldn't have to always kind of hold their hand. Now, yes, there's going to be regressions for sure. 100%. You don't do this world by yourself, right? And you don't do this world by yourself very well. So I think the biggest thing is now where you are and your ability to do everything is phenomenal. And so that's a testament to, you know, have you progressed? Yes. Have you grown? 1,000%.
We have been met with some individuals over our relationship that really tried to undo what you did for me. And so I know that every coach, every trainer isn't necessarily the right person to be helping someone else forge new paths. And you've come to bat for me many times. And there was one trainer, you know, about 10 years ago who you really had to set straight, even if it was just to make sure that I knew that what she was saying about me and my ability wasn't true. That was the exception, not the rule, which was really important.
You know, but she was that type of person that was always looking at your disability and going, oh no, we really can't do that. No, lady, you have no idea about this, Jenna. Like you have no idea what she's like. And that's why I really like Adam, because Adam is just like, kind of like, yep, let's go. Let's do this. It's go time. You know, let's get this going. And so, yeah, definitely. I mean, you're never going to find, I'm a partial lobe professor as well, on top of the other things that I do.
You're slipping that in there, yeah.
And so, yes, definitely, I'm not going to have that perfect connection with every single student, right? No. But I think as a practitioner, and I think as a person that's looking at other people, is, again, extracting their ability, working with their ability, and finding out where their boundaries are, and then just bowling right through them.
Mm-hmm. So imagine imagine that trainer that we were talking about, not Adam. You know, this situation happens again, but you think that there might be some learning space that she has, right? What advice would you give her or someone who hasn't even made up their mind that them training someone or coaching someone with health challenges isn't going to work? And
I think the biggest thing is I would always go back to that person and, you know, just ask them questions and say, you know, what are you unsure of? What do you not understand about their ability? Right. And I say ability because it's really not disability. You got to look at their ability, right? Are you nervous to go through X, Y, and Z? Why are you nervous to go through X, Y, and Z? Oh, okay, because you're going to make things worse. Okay, well, there's only one way to find out. Go and try it once, see what happens. Okay, that didn't work. The same thing with the break falling, right? Was I going to have you break fall from a standing position right off the bat? No, that would be stupid. We build up to it very incrementally to make sure that you were doing it appropriately, you were learning, you were progressing, and then that positivity would transfer over into other aspects that we were working on. And so I think any type of practitioner or personal trainer that is working with someone that has maybe some challenges, I think the biggest thing is looking at what they can do, communicating with them, what do you think you are able to do? What do you think you are not able to do? Why are you not able to do these things? Just that constant communication that I think, unfortunately, a lot of practitioners, as I mentioned before, they kind of get into their own ego and go, I know this and I know what I'm going to do. Okay, that's great. You know what you're going to do for yourself, but it's not going to transfer over to everybody else. That's not how it works. Mm-hmm. And so, for example, same thing with therapy. So I want to say, knock on wood, one of the reasons why I am good at my job, hopefully, is because I think what I do is I constantly communicate with my patients, and I say, okay, how are we doing today? Oh, okay, so today's not a good day because you slipped down the stairs yesterday. Okay, then if your ego is in the way, you'd be like, well, but I need you to progress. So we're just going to go do some jumping lunges and then you're going to end up hurting yourself, right? Versus kind of curtailing it and looking at what they are able to do on that day and then figuring out the goals. And as I mentioned, communication, I cannot focus on how important that is with a client and interacting with people.
Yeah. So it seems like the biggest element is, before you say you can't or this won't work, try to explore why you think it's not going to, and then not be afraid to look to other members of the team.
I think it's important to know or understand that it's not going through life. I think moving forward, it's not important to look at other people's expectations of you. It's to look at what your expectations are of yourself. And so I think, yes, definitely your, life in general will have regressions and progressions and so on, but it's our ability to, quote unquote, get back on the horse, which is the most important part, not to get to the top and go, okay, guys, I'm here. It's the ability to, I failed at this. Okay, how do I do this? Okay, let's get this going again. And I think that's important.
Yeah. Well, hopefully the right people who are willing to go outside of their comfort zone to help people forge new paths hear that, because we need more Claires. We do.
I don't know if the world needs more Claires, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I wouldn't have admitted it when I was a kid. But the world needs more people who recognize that people's potential and strength is not in the same place for everyone. Sometimes
and not every day.
Totally true. Well, my dear, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. And tell me about that event, June 6th, right?
Yes, it's on June 6th. So I'm going to be a panel of, I think, about 7 women, and it's for future Paralympians. And it's through Sports Science of Canada. So I have a contract position with the Canadian Sport Institute Ontario. So they're putting it together as well. And it's a great venue. And for anyone that's considering being a Paralympian or that will be a Paralympian, it's a great way to kind of just get a little bit of feedback on, what is my life going to look like? Where am I going to do things? How am I going to manage my time? How am I going to manage injuries and so on and so forth? And so I'm very excited to be part of this this program for sure. So yeah, June the 6th. I will send you the link, and then if you want to post it out, by all means, go ahead and do that.
Heck yes. I was excited about potential Paralympic run in weightlifting because I thought, you know what?
Which you could still do. You are a powerhouse.
No. See, I know you trained a champion, but boy, oh boy, when I watched those events, like the weightlifting event, like to see, like I came into this like with, you know, just so much confidence, like I know I can lift heavy. This is awesome. This would be a dream come true. Claire, I watched those YouTube videos. They're lifting like 400 pounds.
Well, I guess you're only 50% there then, are you? Let's go.
I'm only at 235 and I'm probably at negative 87 after COVID.
Nope.
Holy smokes. These women, freaking forces of nature. And I know I'm the last person who should be surprised about that. But intimidated me like nobody's business.
Okay. But also at the same token, how are you going to know if you don't try? Honestly.
I haven't
learned
the answer yet.
Let's go. Yep. My goal for you is still to do that. So that's
I know.
Let's go.